In the last part of this tutorial series, we will add some UVs so we can apply some materials to our building. At the end of it, once you have applied your materials, it should something like this, with some quick UVs for the building and all its parts. So let's get to it. Let's start by adding some materials. So what I did, basically I have this magnet. It's going to hold a couple of materials that I'm going to use to check my UVs when I'm going to unwrap them. So what I did is, I went to my to Quixel Bridge and picked a couple of roof textures and a couple of these wall sidings, like something like this, wooden planks or something like that. So something that you would apply to something like a wall or a roof like that. And one more thing, I went to the texture.com and I actually got this texture of a wood fiber texture, because I didn't find any good kind of a texture on a wood, only with like OSB boards and all that, but I want to just a texture wood so that I can texture all of my structure of it. So these are basically going to be my materials that I'm going to use to check on it. So in this wood grain is just a put in material with only the texture on it, and that's it. So let's start by actually putting down the material node. And so basically after the merge, we're going to apply material in here. So let's start creating some UVs. So let's go I'm going to actually go ahead and put a bookmark inside here. I'm actually going to collapse this to the side and drag this out a bit, because we're going to need a little bit more space to view our UVs. So let's go back to let's start with the gables. So for the gables, I extruded, so the setup is pretty simple. I copied the gables and then I reversed them and then I extruded them like that. So what I'm actually I want to apply my materials right before the poly extrude. So let's drag this out a little bit lower and let's make space for our UVs. Something like this. And I like to use this UV texture node. Let's put down the P so we can see the parameters like that. And this UV texture is really nice for unwrapping the flat surfaces. So basically what it gives is these huge UVs, which are actually accurate to the real space, real dimensions of our object. And so let's say we have these UVs and we apply our material. Our material should look correctly on it. Our tile material should look correctly on a real scale. So after that, you see the poly extrude is basically just going to give it sides, automatically going to give sides also UVs, and then the poly bevel is also UVs that we can live with. It's not perfect, but for just applying the material, it's going to be fine. So after we have, let me also color this UV texture node. What I'll do is go ahead, put down a clean node. So in this clean node, I want to basically remove attributes and remove groups. So we're not going to use them. We just want our output to be a single group, and basically want to remove attributes except for the UV attribute, because we set up our UVs and we want those to have except, which is with a caret, except for the UVs. So we don't want to remove UV attribute, but rest of them we want, and the groups also. And then just put down a group node. And let's solve this gable like that. So we have set up our group. Let's go to the let me bookmark also this. Let's go to here. Let's select our gable group, and for the material I'm going to use wooden facade material. So you can see it's applied. You will notice that you can see our tiling pretty well. And one more you can again to do is actually go ahead and go to the material that you actually download and take a look at its scale that is this basically at the real life scale on it, you can see it's basically 2 meters by 2 meters, so it's not 1 by 1. So what you can do is go ahead and go to the material that you're actually applying, like a wooden facade one, and inside the settings there's a scale option. So if you put it to the 2, you can see you can basically scale this however you want, but actually do 2 to 2. And this should actually look a bit better actually right now. So this is another way for us to scale our material when we apply in Houdini, because we don't really want to scale our UVs because they are square. So yeah, so we have our Gable set up, and now let's go ahead and let's try to set up our rafters. So inside these rafters, let's actually, before we go any further, let's actually modify our setup for the boolean. So I remember that we imported this part of this part, which is basically base of it, and then we booleaned it, all of them. It's actually, we do not have to do that. We can actually go ahead and boolean only this sweep node, and after that we can basically just extrude it and do not calculate booleans for every one of these pieces. So what I do is actually go ahead and disconnect this copy to points. So I'm going to copy to points later. So copy to points, these points are going to stay, but what we are going to copy is actually going to be our sweep node. And I'm going to drag this, copy this boolean, delete this boolean, and drag this boolean up. I'm going to boolean my sweep node. Basically, only once I'm going to boolean it, like that. After the boolean, I'm going to put down a edge cusp and all of these. Let me get this out of that window, something like this. And let's just connect this up to the edge cusp, which is basically we are again separating this geometry, and then we can poly extrude. So, and after that we can go ahead and copy the points like that. And for the UVs, make sure that after the edge cusp you have enough space to put down our UV nodes. So put down a UV texture like that, and we want to make sure that now our UVs are actually aligned to it, to align our wooden grain. So I know my texture basically goes upwards like that, so I want to make sure that my UVs also are pointing upwards for this piece of geometry. So what you can do is put down a UV layout, and in here make sure that you put down on scale to fix scale, so it actually doesn't change our scale. And after that we can just put down UV transform, and just rotate them 90 degrees like that. Like that. And so now, so let's actually go ahead and do a little bit more of UVing and then see the results. So for these two, for the support, let's go inside our subnetwork and let's do our UVs right after the copy to points nodes, which is basically these. So we copy to points horizontal and vertical supports, and now what I want to do is go ahead and add our UVs. Put down UV texture. And so for these, for the vertical support, these should be fine because they are pointing basically upwards. But for our horizontal, in real life, it should be basically these going to get the incorrect grain because they are horizontal. What we do is go ahead and create an angle on them. So put down a 90-degree angle on these UV textures like that. And after that, our output should look something like this. After the poly extrudes, and yeah, so that's fine. And if you take a look at the end of it, so UV now should look something like this. Then I also bevel them, and also this bevel node, I added it pretty quickly. We could also add it to these nodes individually because of it should basically just give us faster rendering to make sure that we don't bevel every one of these geometry. But for now, Maybe we will clean this up later, but now let's just focus on UVs. So after that, what you do is, after the poly level, put down a clean node. So let's delete the remove attributes except for the UV. And let's put on a group. I'm just going to, since it's going to get, say, basically the same material, I'm just going to call this roof frame. And let's actually reuse this setup also for the other parts of our roof. So inside here, where I created these boards, what I'm going to do is actually go ahead and after the merge, actually going to merge also this part before the poly extrude. So basically these two parts, I'm going to go ahead and merge like that. And after that, I'm going to put down a poly bevel because the poly bevel is going to be the same. And then it's just a clean and adding a group to it like that. And let's just go ahead quickly, let's disconnect this wire. And after the peak node, I put down a UV texture node like that, color it, and that should be it. So the same setup is fine for also this part of the roof. So our UV should be set up, and let's go ahead and connect this up to the overall merge node like that. So now let's go to the materials. Let's add this. Let's add material. Let's take a look at how it actually looks. So let me actually copy this to take a look at only at the roof. What we can do is I'm going to go ahead and copy this material. And let's go to the, once we have set up our group, paste it inside and connect this up. And let's just use a roof frame. And as a material, I want to add my wood grain material. Let's take a look at it. So you can see we should get a good UVs. And one thing to note that since my texture is actually not uniform, it actually ends up with something being something like a 1:2 ratio on this texture. What I did is actually went ahead to my wood grain, and in settings I can put down its scale 1 to, it actually scale is 1.1 and 2.1. So this should give us a better scale for my UVs. But you can see that basically all the setup is making as our a little bit more realistic our UVs. And now let's apply this material to the end of it. So I'm going to go to my material, create a new group, roof frame, and that's going to be my wood grain material. So we are slowly applying materials, and now let's deal with our roof. So let's go to the our roof trims. So this is my roof before I extrude it. So let's put down a UV texture like that. And so after our extrude, our poly bevel, we want to go ahead and set up our groups. So these are my trims for the roof corners. So let's put down a clean node. So the clean node, let's delete everything but the UV. So let's group. Let's call this a ridge. And for our roof, we're going to need a little bit more of a setup because actually let's create this, and let's actually, after the poly bevel, let's clean this also. Let's clean this out and put down a group. It's going to be our roof like that. So we have our simple UV setup. So let's take a look at them. So after that, we have both of them goes to the merge. And after here, let's create our new. So this is going to be our roof. And the material, I chose this roof shingles material like this. But there's going to be a couple of problems with it because of the way that our UV texture node unwraps them. So you can see that these look correctly. You can see that these darker spots should be on the on my texture. You can see these darker spots should basically face down. So this looks correctly, and this also looks correctly. So for this one, but also remember that we can also rotate our roof. So let me actually rotate it. and you can see that in this rotation, actually, our roof is incorrectly rotated. So let's go ahead and accommodate our roof rotations on both sides. What we can do, let's go back to our UV texture and create our angle expression. So our angle expression is actually going to follow our rotate roof parameter. So just copy relative reference to the parameter of rotate roof, like that. And inside there, let's write out if, and then you paste inside a relative reference equals, let's say 0. Basically, if we are not rotating it, we want our angle to be 90. We want to rotate our roof around 90, and if not, then it's going to be 0. So let's go back to our materials. So let's take a look at it. So you can see, let's rotate it. So this was the initial roof setup that actually worked out. You can see our roof looks fine. And now let's rotate it. You can see that we are now rotating our you can see that our islands are actually rotating. And there is one more problem. Basically, because of our UV texture, you can see that this looks correctly. So this depends on the roof that you have, you want to apply. You can easily tell which roof should go down or downwards. Like this one, you can see that this should be fine, but the other side is actually is facing upwards. And that's just the way that these UV islands are unwrapped. And to fix this, what we can do is go ahead and go back to our UV texture. And so what I did notice that always the texture that I want to rotate is actually this 0 polygon texture on my roof. So what I'm going to do is actually put down a switch node. But let's put down a switch node, and let's put down a UV transform node. And we are going to actually go ahead and transform our group 0 group 0 polygon by 90 degrees. So in this UV transform, actually by 180, we want to rotate. You can see if I select my group 0, I can rotate only that UV island by whatever I want. And I want to basically flip it around. It's going to be 180 degrees and connect this up to our switch. So let's connect this up. And in my switch, I want to use my CH relative reference to my roof rotation. So just copy this parameter and paste inside like that. And now it's actually should, you can see already we are rotating my roof. Let's take a look at it. So this is the, this part was actually rotated incorrectly. You can see now our roof is actually facing correctly. Let me rotate my roof in here. You can see we are, so in this time, in this when we are rotating roof, we are not flipping around a 0 island. So this is a quick fix for the UVs for a roof. And now let's unwrap our walls and trims. So let's go to the walls and trims. So the setup for me, it's basically we have one merge for the trims that I poly bevel. And then the poly bevel after the walls goes to the overall merge. So let's start with the trims. So the trims, I want to also make sure that they also face basically upwards to for my wood texture. So what I will do is go ahead and start with the which one is the easier, which is the corners. And for corners, we just have to put down a UV texture. So after the blast, before the poly extrude, we have so these UVs are basically done. And for this setup, we're going to have to do a little bit more setup. So I basically extrude my corners like that. So before that, what we can do is also create a little bit more of a separation for our trims, so that they are looks like that they are actually connected together, which you can put down the edge cusp node, and this will actually go ahead and separate all of this geometry. And after the poly extrude and poly bevel, there's going to be this kind of a separation. So actually I think I'm going to leave it with the edge cusp node, And so for the UVs, I want to put down a UV layout node. So let's take a look at it. So UV layout, before we want to UV flatten before that. So let's take a look at our UV. So it's actually going to go ahead and unflatten it. So because of our edge cusp, it's actually went ahead and correctly set up our UVs, which basically all of them are now horizontal. We just want to make sure that they are correctly scaled, and then we just want to rotate them. So let's do this by going ahead and we don't even need our UV layout anymore. And for the scale for the UVs for the trims, you can use a UV texel density node. So after they have been flattened, put down UV texel density, and what you could do is use the scale to match texel density, and let's not use a UV layout because we have already layout, and that they overlap doesn't really matter to us. So this should actually go ahead and scale our UVs to the correct real world size to it, like that. And after the poly extrude, we are merging these together, but now we could basically want to UV transform them. We just want to transform them at 90 degrees, like that. Let's do it positive 90 degrees. So yeah, so these are basically our UV setup. After the merge, our UV should look something like this. So, and after the poly bevel, we want to go ahead and put down a clean node. You can clean all the attributes and groups, and in the group, let's call these trims, like that. So that's a trim setup. And for the walls it's actually going to be really simple. So after this one, let's just do it before the poly bevel UV texture. So I did this right after the extruded geometry, because actually it gave me a weird UVs from my boolean after I extruded. So it doesn't really matter for us to also UV texture after the extrusion for something like where there are straight corners and all of that. So that's fine. We can leave it at that. After poly bevel, let's put down a clean. Just going to go ahead and copy this setup. Let's just connect this up. It's clean, poly bevel, clean, and group walls. And I'm just going to go ahead and merge this together like that. So this setup should be done, and now let's apply our materials. So after applying materials, I went ahead and applied the wood material to my trims. You can see we're getting a really nice look for the trims that follows along the grain of the wood, like that. And the same for the caps, like that. So that's good, and let's go ahead and unwrap our doors and windows. So actually I started already a little bit of unwrapping, and I forgot to actually start push record. So, and I'm not doing that again, so you're just gonna have to look what I did. So for the windows, so for the initial structure of the for the stud cutout, so I went ahead and for the initial studs, UV texture, like that, and then we have a top and bottom cutouts that are going to be at the window top and bottom, basically UV texture and UV transform to make sure that it's along the y-axis, basically on both of them, and that's it for the stud. And for the window inside it, let's go inside it. So I started to work on this one. So for the actual window, let's go ahead and put down a UV flatten node. And I also want to make sure that my UV is going to also be cut up. So for the cutting up of this simple geometry, what you can do is in UV flatten, disable the manual layout, like that. It actually should already, and now for that you can basically in the seams put down seams with the stars, which basically everything is going to be cut up like that. And now you can put down a texel density, make sure that we scale UVs to match textile density, like that, a UV transform. Then we can just go ahead and rotate them 90 degrees, like that. Let's actually go ahead and color these, and we're going to use the same setup, just copy all of these nodes. So this is for, we can also use this multiple times, this setup. So that's good for the outside framing. And for the inside framing, our UVs are actually not very nice, because we blasted basically the thickness of it, transformed it, and the extrude doesn't really create our UVs inside here. So what we can do is just go ahead and put down again the same setup. So actually going to give it a little bit space, like that, and this should be the same setup for our other UVs too, like that. So this should be unwrapped, and what I'm going to do is start giving some groups. So I'm going to put down a clean node for our window, because we want to basically both of them are going to be cleaned. Put down a group. So this is going to be a window class, and this is going to be our window frame, like that. So we clean them and then we just merge them together. And so we also want to go ahead and before the want to go ahead and merge these together before they clean this and this, like that, and then clean them inside here, and then create a frame group, like that. So let's take a look at groups. So we have frame and window group. For the doors, it's very similar setup. So what I'm going to do is actually go ahead and copy this UV texture node and go after the sweep on the door, just paste inside like that. So that's for the door. It's for the framing. So let's for the next one. So what we did inside here, we create our groups. Let's actually take a look at the merge. What else we have to UV unwrap? So what we want to do is unwrap also the top, which I think is this one. So let me just copy UV texture and UV transform inside here and paste inside like that. And yeah, so that should be for the framing setup. And for the door setup, it's basically the same thing as for the windows. So just going to quickly run through the setup. So inside here, from the initial extrude, we put down a UV flatten node, and then the same thing as UV textile density, and rotate them like that. So that's for the frame. For the actual frame of the door, it's basically UV flatten, textile density, and transforming. Basically the same setup. And for the cross sections, is basically the UV texture and rotate, and for the doors it's just a UV texture node, like that. And that's just a setup like that. And for the doorknobs, we already had a group, we already had UVs, so that's good. We then basically just go ahead and clean this up. After the cleanup, we give it a group. You can also give some normals to it. Because of this doorknob, we need to make sure that it is basically rounded, so we can give some basically round, shaded normals. But so yeah, so that's that. And for the door group setup, we just go ahead in this merge. We merge our initial door and the door frame, and both of them we obviously clean this up before the merging. So yeah, so that's a simple door setup. Once we have merged it, these groups should be already set up, and we shouldn't really change them. And after that, there shouldn't be any problems with the setup as it was. And I added some materials to it. So I added a glass material for the window and the framing. So I just added these up to take a look how it looks like. So yeah, so that's our UVs for the doors and windows. And for the setup for the framing, it's a little bit modified. So what I did is basically wherever we went ahead and swept, I used the basically the same pattern, UV flatten, UV textile density to lay out our geometry, and then UV transform like that. So wherever you see these blue nodes, basically they are UV textures, UV nodes new, and then we just went ahead and merged them together like that. And one difference is that I actually want to make sure that basically after the merge of the framing, I cleaned it and gave a group framing, but I didn't merge together my decking because I want to make sure that it's a different group, and I want to add different material to it. So after the decking extrusion, UV texture, clean, and decking like that. And that's going to go to the merge, the poly bevel, and at the end of it merge, and then I applied some materials, and if I go ahead and look inside it, the inside should look something like this. I basically everywhere I use this wood material, so it looks pretty nice actually. The wood grain is correctly aligned with it. I got my OSB material. So yeah, so I skipped ahead from setting up these nodes because it's really is kind of a boring process to it. And with the magic of editing, I added different materials and different shape for my building to check out the results of it. So basically this should be my UV unwrapped and basically the done project file. So first, but we have to do a little bit more of fixes. What I actually noticed when I started to looking at it. So there was these weird polygons on my wood pieces when I beveled them. So let's go to the bevel of these pieces. So basically my wood parameter on my HDA. So I always had I just wanted a little bit of a bevel, so I put it at 1. But you can see that for the wood pieces, it actually doesn't like 1 times. Basically, this UV actually is not unwrapping, so it leaves these ugly black marks. So the easiest way, I just put it on 2, and that's it. Then it creates UVs like that. So that's a quick fix for that. Or the alternate way, you could basically in the poly bevel create a group of it. Polygon fillet, point fillet polygons. And what you can do is basically go ahead and save this group for the later and then unwrap it individually. Only these corners if you do not want to bevel it 2 times. Or you could use a different unwrapping method. So yeah, so that's one thing. So I just put it on 2, and that should basically fix that part. And it's not everywhere, like something like for the bevels for these corners and for the walls, it actually worked really nicely without needing to fix. Also for the trims. So yeah, so that's just for the wood pieces like that. So that's fix 1. And another one I actually noticed is after I apply materials, let me clip this geometry inside here. I took around, and you can see that my trim is actually intersecting with my wall because I offset it exactly the wall thickness. Basically, I offset it exactly where the wall starts. So let's go back and fix stuff. That should be pretty easy. I have to go to my trim creation, and on my peak node, basically where I created offset my my trim, I just want to add to my width division plus something like 0.001, and that should move it just enough away so that I do not get any intersections inside it like that. So that's another fix I did. So what else? Oh right, so and at the end of it I actually want to go ahead and add this create my HDA a little bit different setup because I want to make sure that this box can be inputted inside the from my HDA. So let's actually go ahead and create that so that we can input box to our HDA and get our geometry out. For the output, I do not want to apply any materials. I just want to put down an output flag. So it's going to be my HDA output. And input, I have to open up type properties, and so minimum input is going to be 1, maximum inputs. So we can basically 1, 1, and 1 applied. And it's going to say that it's basically my materials are referenced outside the network, and that's fine because we're not going to use these materials. So because these materials will be applied outside the network anyways. So inside here, let's put down a box. Let's actually go ahead and copy the input box. So I have basically the same shape. So let's connect it. Inside here, let's find the, so it's kind of hard to find sometimes the basically the input node was hiding inside here. So I had little problems to actually find it. So basically inside of this box, let's delete the box. And now this is going to be our input. Like that and like that. And that should be it. We basically should have basically the same geometry. And any of these materials, let's copy them out. I'm just going to go ahead and copy. And we're going to put it inside here. We're going to apply our materials outside the network. And that's it. So our each day, we input our box. We play around with it. We apply materials. And we can also clip it. But yeah, so all the parameters are inside here. We can change our sizes. Let's go ahead and add some maybe roof offset like that, roof height. Yeah. And this will conclude my tutorial series on procedural building creation. Hope you learned something new and see you next time.